The M3 Stuart was the first major light tank for the US in World War II. It earned the nickname Honey from British crews because they loved how smooth it handled. It was fast and reliable, even if the armor was pretty thin against German guns. It used a radial aircraft engine which gave it a unique sound on the battlefield. While it was eventually outclassed by heavier tanks, it stayed useful for scouting and support missions, because it could go places bigger tanks just could not reach. As the war went on, the army needed improvements to the M3, which led to the M5 Stuart. The biggest change was switching to twin Cadillac engines and an automatic transmission. This made the tank much easier to drive and more reliable in the field. You can spot an M5 by its raised rear deck and the lack of a hull machine gun on the side. Even though it still used the same 37mm gun, the better internal layout helped the crew work more efficiently during intense combat situations. Following the Stuart series, the M22 Locust was a very special tank designed specifically for airborne operations. It was small enough to be carried by a large transport glider or strapped to the bottom of a bomber. Because it had to be so light, the armor was extremely thin and the gun was quite small. It saw some action with British paratroopers during the crossing of the Rhine late in the war. It proved that light tanks could be delivered right from the sky to support infantry on the ground. By the end of the war, the M24 Chaffee arrived to replace the aging Stuarts. It was a massive leap forward in design. It featured a much more powerful 75mm gun that could actually fight back against tougher targets. The Chaffee used torsion bar suspension, which made it very fast and comfortable to drive across rough ground. It was widely considered the best light tank of the war. It stayed in service long after 1945, seeing heavy action during the opening months of the Korean War. Moving into the Cold War era, the M41 Walker Bulldog was developed to provide better protection and firepower. It was significantly larger than previous light tanks and carried a long 76mm gun. This tank was built for speed and agility, meant to scout ahead of the main force and harass enemy flanks. While it was a very capable machine, it was also quite loud and consumed a lot of fuel. It served as the backbone of many Allied forces and saw extensive combat during the Vietnam War. In the 1950s, the Army experimented with the M56 Scorpion to give airborne troops some heavy hitting power. This was basically a big 90mm gun mounted on a tiny, unarmored tracked chassis. It was so light that it could be dropped by parachute into combat zones. The crew sat out in the open with almost no protection, which made it a very dangerous vehicle to operate. However, it was incredibly mobile and could hide in small spaces, making it a very effective ambush weapon in the jungle. Another unique design from this era was the M50 Ontos. This strange-looking vehicle was originally meant for the army but ended up being a hero for the Marines. It was armed with 6 recoilless rifles, allowing it to fire a devastating volley of heat rounds at enemy tanks or bunkers. The Ontos was extremely small and could navigate terrain that heavier tanks would get stuck in. It became legendary during the Battle of Hue, where its massive firepower was used to clear out enemy positions. The M551 Sheridan was designed to be a truly multi-purpose light tank that could swim across rivers and be dropped from planes. Its most unique feature was the 152mm gun launcher, which could fire both standard shells and Shillelagh anti-tank missiles. The hull was made of aluminum to keep the weight down, though this made it vulnerable to mines. The Sheridan saw heavy use in Vietnam and was even used during the invasion of Panama, remaining in service until the late 1990s. The Stingray was a private venture light tank that combined high-tech features with a classic layout. It was designed to give smaller nations the firepower of a main battle tank on a much lighter and cheaper chassis. It carried a 1.5mm rifled gun, which was the same caliber used by the original M1 Abrams. Though the US Army never officially adopted it for large-scale use, the Stingray was a perfect example of how light tank design was evolving to handle modern 105mm ammunition. The XM8 armored gun system was intended to replace the Sheridan for airborne units. It featured a modular armor system, meaning it could be lightly armored for airdrops or heavily up-armored for conventional ground combat. It was equipped with an advanced 105mm gun and an autoloader, which allowed for a smaller crew of only 3 people. Although it performed exceptionally well in tests and was ready for production, the project was cancelled in the mid-1990s due to budget cuts. With the retirement of the Sheridan and cancellation of the XM8, the Army turned to the M1138 mobile gun system to fill the direct fire role. Unlike previous vehicles on this list, the M1128 was wheeled rather than tracked, based on the Striker platform. It used an overhead gun system to keep the profile low and protect the crew. While it was great for supporting infantry against bunkers and snipers, the heavy gun on a wheeled frame created some mechanical challenges over its long service life. The Griffin 1 was a technology demonstrator that kickstarted the modern search for a new light tank. It combined a lightweight chassis with the turret and electronics of the M1 Abrams. This vehicle was designed to show that a smaller tank could still pack the electronic punch and situational awareness of a full-sized main battle tank. It served as a proof of concept, proving that modern materials and digital systems could finally solve the old problems of weight and protection for light armor. The Griffin II was the next step in the evolution and served as the direct competitor for the Mobile Protected Firepower program. It refined the design by using a 105mm gun and a chassis based on the Ajax Scout vehicle. This version focused heavily on survivability, using advanced sensors and armor packages that could be changed depending on the mission. It was designed specifically to work alongside infantry brigades, giving them the mobile cannon they had been missing for decades. While the Griffin II focused on the gun, the Griffin III explored even more advanced tech. It featured a massive 50mm automatic cannon and a high-tech hull that could carry a small squad of soldiers in the back. It also included an integrated drone system to scout ahead of the tank. While this specific configuration was more of a test bed, many of the lessons learned about sensors and electronics were fed directly into the final design for the Army's next-generation light tank. The evolution finally led to the M10 Booker, which officially entered service in 2023. While the Army technically calls it a combat vehicle rather than a light tank, it fulfills that exact role for the modern era. It is designed to provide massive fire support to light infantry units that cannot bring heavy Abrams tanks with them. With its digital fire control, heavy 105mm gun, and advanced protection, the Booker represents the pinnacle of decades of light tank development and history.